Amid the chaos where the gods betrayed the world and allowed the Demon King to destroy everything, a massive earthquake struck at the same time, the birth of humanity's last hero. However, after the turmoil that claimed countless lives had subsided, Grand Baza, one of the four heavenly generals, found a starving baby beneath a tree. He decided to adopt the child, naming him Dariel, firmly believing that the baby was an angel. Meanwhile, his real son, Basfazer, had been waiting for years for his father's return. Unfortunately, the moment Basfazer saw the new child by his father's side, he immediately realized that Dariel had stolen the childhood that should have been his. Long story short, when Basfazer eventually rose in rank to become one of the four demon generals, he wasted no time exiling Dariel. His reason was simple: Dariel was the only demon who could not use magic. Basfazer even threatened to burn him alive if he didn't leave immediately. After a lifetime of faithfully serving the demons, Dariel was left without a home and forced to wander through the wilderness, starving for weeks. However, his fate changed when he heard the scream of a beautiful girl who landed nearby just as a giant wild beast lunged at her. Dariel managed to block the monster's attack, but he knew very well that without magic, he would likely lose his life. To make matters worse, as he rushed forward, his legs weakened from hunger, allowing the beast to easily break through his defense and throw his body away. The only thing he had with him was a dagger. He picked it up despite not knowing how to use human weapons. Then suddenly, as the beast charged at him, his hidden power awakened. This allowed him to drive the dagger deep into the creature's heart and kill it instantly. Even though he had merely imitated the movements of a hero, the girl was still deeply grateful that he had saved her life. On the other hand, Dariel knew that getting involved with humans was extremely dangerous for a demon. Unfortunately, the girl insisted on holding onto this seemingly useless man, begging him to visit her village so she could treat him to a delicious meal as a token of gratitude. Unable to refuse, Dariel eventually gave in as she dragged him along. Upon arriving at the village, this self-deprecating outcast met the girl's parents. They introduced themselves and asked why Dariel was in the middle of the forest. Realizing his position as a demon in enemy territory, Dariel told Marika that his own kin had cast him out, leaving him homeless for weeks. Hearing his sad story, they pleaded with him to stay at their home. Her mother agreed as well, believing Dariel could protect them from monster attacks. Soon after, in Bill, the village mayor, warmly welcomed him. At first, Dariel hesitated, worried that his presence might put them in danger. However, his eyes fell upon something he felt was worth protecting. At that moment, he realized he needed to use his strength to protect this family. That night became the first time in the long while that he could sleep peacefully in a proper bed. Not long after, Marika knocked on his door and revealed that she was usually the one others relied on. Because of that, she admitted she had never been saved by anyone before, and that moment when Dariel rescued her had made her truly happy. By dawn, Bill surprised everyone by revealing that besides being the village mayor, he was also the head of the village guild. He immediately asked Dariel to register as an adventurer. Hearing this, Dariel hesitated and wondered if there were other jobs available, since as far as he knew, only humans could join the guild. To hide his demon identity, he even pretended that his back was broken so he could avoid registering. Unfortunately, the plan failed miserably. They ended up forcing his hand onto the contract paper. At that moment, a surge of mana wrapped around his body and formed an official seal. In that instant, Dariel experienced a deep inner shock. All his life, he had believed he was a demon. But in reality, he was just an ordinary human who had grown up among demons. The test session then began in an open field. Bill explained the concept of the 4-weapon auras. First was Slash. Without hesitation, Dariel demonstrated it and effortlessly cut through a massive log with a single casual strike. This made everyone curious about what else he could do. Next was Strike. When Dariel swung his hammer, it carved a massive hole into the mountain. Though secretly, they had hoped he would aim somewhere else. Then came Thrust, testing his archery skills. With a single shot, a distant target was completely destroyed. Bill rubbed his eyes in disbelief, while Marika happily hugged Dariel into her flesh shield, much to Bill's despair as he lay crying on the ground. Telling Dariel to use a real shield instead, the final test was guard, and Bill personally tested Dariel's defense by striking him with full force using an iron club. Dariel easily blocked the attack, sending Bill flying backward in a comical fashion. After recovering, Bill declared that Dariel possessed all 4 perfect auras. This was an anomaly, as most people could only master one aura in their lifetime. Bill believed such monstrous talent should be sent to the elite central guild. However, seeing the villagers tear up, Dariel refused. He firmly stated that he would not leave, as he wanted to repay their kindness for giving him a home. At once, they rushed to embrace him, and Dariel realized that this source of happiness was where his new life would begin. The next day, Bill introduced Dariel to the villagers. Unfortunately, an adventurer named Gazeta appeared. claiming that Dariel was unworthy of becoming one. When Dariel showed his E-rank card, Gazeta mocked him, flaunting his own D-rank status and demanding respect as a senior. Not bothered, Dariel later received his first mission from Inbil to gather medicinal herbs, with a warning about Blade Monkey's giant, dangerous creatures. Ironically, Dariel casually mentioned that he had already killed one the day before. This realization left Inbil speechless, feeling like he had lost both his pride and his daughter, who was growing even closer to Dariel. As a result of defeating an S-ranked monster, Dariel was immediately promoted to D-rank. Soon after, they offered to guide him through the forest. At first, Dariel thought it would be a simple walk, but Marika instead dragged him up a steep cliff. There, she confessed her dream of becoming an adventurer and her desire to repay him. Using the excuse of being afraid of getting lost, she held his hand tightly and led him to a medicinal garden. An awkward moment followed as she taught him how to identify good herbs according to her. They had to be hard and long, while pulling out an entire plant as an example. Suddenly, she claimed to see deer tracks, even though Dariel saw nothing. She then asked if he was brave enough to fight a bear alone, admitting that she herself was too scared to do so. Strangely, when she asked permission to call him by his first name, she hugged him so tightly and nearly crushed his bones. That romantic moment was interrupted when a deer emitting a demonic aura appeared. Dariel felt reluctant to kill it, but Marika instead thought it looked delicious and wanted to hunt it. At that moment, Dariel realized that Marika was far more savage than any monster. Long story short, they returned to the village with their catch, astonishing the villagers and making Gazeta even more jealous. Days passed peacefully until one day, Dariel met Gazeta at the guild, who was in a bad mood because Dariel kept completing missions effortlessly. The situation escalated when Inbil presented a dangerous mission, hunting a C-rank serpent. Driven by pride, Gazeta recklessly accepted the mission despite the risk to his life. Without hesitation, Dariel promised to save him. Armed with medicine made by Marika, Dariel headed into the forest. As expected, the atmosphere was ominous, with fallen trees everywhere. Gazeta was seen running in terror, chased by a giant serpent. As the monster was about to devour him, he fired an arrow, but it was useless. Right on time, Dariel rushed in. His sword glowed with aura as he slashed the serpent to protect her. However, the monster was still alive and struck back with its tail. Dariel managed to block the attack with an invisible shield, but his sword shattered into pieces. In that critical moment, he remembered a combination technique. Using the fragments of his blade, he combined strike and thrust, throwing them like bullets into the serpent's body. The creature's stomach swelled and exploded instantly. With the monster finally defeated, Dariel quickly treated Gazeta using the medical knowledge Marika had taught him. Realizing that the person he despised had saved and cared for him, Gazeta broke down in tears, both ashamed and deeply moved. The next morning, what should have been a peaceful breakfast turned chaotic when Gazeta burst into the room and casually called Dariel big brother. Honestly, deep down, Dariel wished he had just let him die the night before, without any shame. Gazeta chattered on, declaring that he would become Dariel's new disciple and stubbornly insisted on following him wherever he went for training. Hearing the word training made Dariel's mind drift back to his past in the demon army, making him wonder whether the 4 demon generals were still busy fighting the heroes. Meanwhile, in the Demon King's castle, the situation was indeed in chaos. Xaviantes had just returned after being utterly defeated by a hero, yet he blamed his assistant for being useless after failing to scout the enemy camp. After Basfaza decided to fire the incompetent subordinate, they realized they had already dismissed 5 assistants. This left them wondering if they would ever find a capable one. Amid the confusion, Droya suggested bringing Dariel back, believing he was the perfect man skilled in war tactics and highly reliable. Unfortunately, the moment Dariel's name was mentioned, Basfaza exploded in rage, declaring that the name was forbidden to ever be spoken again back in the village. As the autumn winds began to blow, Gazeta kept following Dariel around like a chick, constantly calling him big brother to Dariel. He was nothing more than an annoying side character he secretly wished would disappear. But he had far bigger problems. Every time he returned home at sunset, Marika would leap into his arms. While it sounded romantic, her deadly hugs nearly crushed his bones in painful ways. Behind all the cheerfulness, Dariel began to notice something strange, as if the village was hiding a big secret. That night, while recovering, he saw Marika pouting and apologizing because her hug had almost killed him earlier. Of course, Dariel knew she was just overly enthusiastic and forgave her. Still, his curiosity led him to ask Inbil why the village felt like it was dying, with so many abandoned houses. Finally, Inbil revealed the truth. He showed a map and brought Dariel to the mithril mine, a special cave where the most valuable metal was extracted. He explained that after the demons took over the mine, villagers began to flee, and it was only a matter of time before the village completely died out. That very night, Dariel made up his mind. He couldn't let the village that had helped him be destroyed, so he decided to visit the mithril mine himself. The next morning, he descended the cliff and arrived at the mining area, wondering if he could borrow some mithril. Just then, he spotted an empty wooden crate and came up with a ridiculous idea, sneaking in by hiding inside it like a professional spy. However, once inside, he was surprised by how quiet the place was, as if all the guards had fled. Suddenly, he heard the sound of shovels hitting the ground. Peeking out, he saw his former subordinates, the Nokers, still diligently mining. The moment they saw Dariel, they screamed in excitement, overjoyed to see their former boss again. They even lined up neatly just to have their heads patted by him. They tearfully explained that they were being forced to produce 4 times their usual output without any rest. Worse, all the guards had been withdrawn because the Demon King had gone bankrupt and could no longer feed his army. In the middle of this reunion, magic lights suddenly turned on, signaling the arrival of soldiers. A man named Lizette appeared and immediately got angry upon seeing the prepared mithril crates. He shouted at the Nokers, claiming the amount was insufficient and demanded 3 times more, despite the Nokers begging for mercy due to exhaustion and starvation after months of forced labor. Lizette cruelly struck the ground and insulted them as demi-humans fit only to be slaves. Unable to endure it any longer, one Noker bravely flew up and punched Lizette, declaring they would no longer work for the Demon King, panicking at the loss of control. The cowardly Lizette ordered his soldiers to slaughter the Nokers. As the soldiers began casting magic, a shovel suddenly flew through the air, canceling the spell. Through the smoke, Dariel appeared like a hero, pulling the Nokers to safety. Pointing his sword, he warned the soldiers to retreat, reminding them that demon code forbade the killing of civilians. Feeling challenged, Lizette demanded to know his identity. Calmly, Dariel claimed to be a human adventurer and swore he would kill Lizette if he didn't back down. The situation escalated as Lizette ordered a full attack, accusing the Nokers of rebellion. Seeing this, Dariel raised his sheathed sword, determined to subdue them without killing. Cleverly, as the soldiers began chanting spells, he moved swiftly, breaking their concentration and knocking off their helmets before the spells could be completed. From that, Dariel realized the soldiers were actually holding back and still had a conscience. He planted his sword into the ground and tried to persuade them by reminding them of their oath. Unfortunately, the stubborn Lizette ordered another attack. Thanks to his knowledge of every spell and casting time, Dariel precisely cancelled each magical attack launched by Lizette's forces. Frustrated, Lizette ordered the use of physical magic stone hands, but Dariel easily sliced it into pebbles. Finally, having run out of options, Lizette unleashed a massive magical blast. Without difficulty, Dariel cut through the attack and dashed forward, swinging his sword toward Lizette's neck. Terrified, Lizette immediately begged for mercy, admitting that he couldn't actually fight and had only become a general because he entertained Basfaza at royal parties. Hearing such a pitiful confession, Dariel felt disappointed and called him disgraceful. With a single swift strike, he shaved off all of Lizette's hair as a warning and ordered him to resign immediately. After Lizette and his troops fled in fear, the Nokers cheered with joy. They decided to appoint Dariel as their new master and promised to send all the mithril they mined to him. After returning to the village, Dariel immediately brought good news to Inbil, saying that he had successfully reclaimed the mithril mine. He also asked the village to protect the Nokers from demon threats. Of course, Inbil agreed and promised to report the situation to the Central Guild. As time passed, peaceful days returned, and the villagers gradually came back. The mithril mine resumed operations, and Inbil couldn't stop thanking Dariel for saving the village's future. Amid that warm moment, Mariko appeared bringing lunch for Dariel while playfully asking about her beloved. Meanwhile, in the Demon Empire, things were far from peaceful. Xaviantes visited Basfaza's private chamber and was shocked to see a massive mithril sphere inside. When asked about it, Basfaza proudly explained that he was creating a compressed magic weapon called Giga Flare, capable of storing immense magical energy. To show off, he activated a magic circle and unleashed a terrifying explosion from the ground. With this power, he believed he would become the greatest general and even the next Demon King. However, Xaviantes remained skeptical and questioned how he could continue such an extreme experiment that required huge amounts of mithril. Basfaza admitted that he had forced the Nokers to work non-stop to drain the mine. Unfortunately, Xaviantes brought bad news. The mithril mine had been taken back, and the Demon King had summoned Basfaza in the throne room. The Demon King, who turned out to be a young girl with blazing eyes, furiously scolded Basfaza for losing the mithril forces. She called him foolish and forced him to apologize. Even more painfully, she suggested that Basfaza should learn from Dariel, whom she described as talented, intelligent, and kind. Hearing Dariel's name being praised made Basfaza explode in rage, even damaging the castle walls as he stormed out. Back in the village, Marika was overjoyed to see her home thriving again. In her excitement, she even blurted out that they should have children soon to make the village livelier. This left Dariel so shocked that he pretended not to hear it. Soon after, a new problem rose. Casita nearly got into a fight with a group of foreign adventurers led by Pippetin, a very arrogant B-rank adventurer. He mocked Dariel for being only D-rank and claimed that the mithril mine now belonged to his group. The situation escalated when Pippetin insulted Casita, calling him nothing more than a green-haired dog. Not taking it lightly, Dariel cleverly fired back, saying that the snake Pippetin failed to defeat was actually beaten by that dog. Casita added fuel to the fire by revealing that Dariel was the one who truly killed the giant serpent. The other adventurers were shocked, and the villagers cheered, even tossing Dariel into the air like a rank hero. That night, Casita told Marika about the incident during dinner. Enraged, Marika immediately drew her sword, ready to take revenge for Dariel, but fortunately, she was stopped before things turned into a massacre. The next day, a representative from the Central Guild arrived and asked Dariel to mediate negotiations with the Nogres. Cleverly, Dariel first confirmed what would happen if the negotiations failed, and the representative assured him they would withdraw inside the cave. The Nogres were happy to see Dariel and immediately agreed to cooperate, leaving the guild representative astonished. However, as they exited the cave, they were confronted by Pippetin, who had been hired as the guild's escort. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed through the forest sky. Sensing a familiar aura, Dariel rushed toward the source using his enhanced speed. There, he encountered a demon army led by Baziria, the water general and an old rival of Dariel. Surprisingly, instead of attacking, Baziria warmly greeted him, expressing concern after his exile. During their brief reunion, Baziria revealed that the demon empire had fallen into chaos since Dariel left. Basfos's incompetence had led to the dismissal of hundreds of assistants and the loss of the mithril mine. Baziria invited Dariel to return and even proposed peace with the Nogres. However, Dariel firmly refused, saying he was now happy living in the village. Unwilling to give up, Baziria trapped Dariel in a water prison to force him to come along. But Dariel casually broke free and proposed another solution: he would sell mithril to the demons at 4 times the price. That night, Dariel presented this business plan to the guild representative. According to him, it was the only way to prevent war, since demons desperately needed mithril. While Baziria agreed out of necessity, Pippetin strongly opposed it and even tried to attack Baziria. Thankfully, Dariel stopped him. The furious guild representative scolded Pippetin, reminding him he was just an escort. In the end, the trade agreement was finalized. A few days later, Dariel searched for a blacksmith to process the mithril, only to run into Pippetin again at an old village workshop. The disgraced adventurer arrogantly drove him out, claiming the place now belonged to his group. It turned out Pippetin had been fired from his escort duty and vented his frustration by taking over the workshop. Amid the tension, Marika suddenly jumped into Dariel's arms, complaining about a perverted old man who had touched her chest. Ironically, the old man insulted her by saying her chest was saggier than his elderly wife's. Furious, Marika nearly killed him before Dariel stopped her. That old man turned out to be Smith, a legendary blacksmith. He was impressed that Dariel had defeated a giant serpent with a dull blade. When Smith examined Dariel's hand, he was shocked to discover that Dariel possessed maximum aura in all 4 elements. Smith promised to forge a weapon for him. However, the problem was that the village workshop was under Pippetin's control. So Smith came up with a crazy idea. He heated his own mithril in normal fire until it turned black, then hammered it until it melted and shone brightly. The result was an incredibly powerful new blade for Dariel. Seeing this, Pippetin suddenly appeared and begged Smith to teach his men, but Smith flatly refused. Furious, Pippetin left while making threats. Smith then revealed that he actually had his own workshop, brought by his apprentice from the city. However, its ethanol furnace required a fire spirit to ignite. The next day, Dariel asked Baziria for help to light the furnace. Comically, Casita became jealous upon seeing Dariel with another man. Baziria, even thinking he was being replaced. In the end, Smith successfully ignited the furnace and vowed to create the greatest weapon of his dreams specifically for Dariel. The conflict reached its peak when Pippetin invited Dariel to meet in the forest. He claimed the Central Guild had deceived them about the mine's profits and proposed that they work together to take over the village. Dariel firmly rejected the scheme, refusing to cooperate with someone who had harmed the people he cared about. Enraged, Pippetin threw his glove at Dariel, a formal duel challenge. When Dariel picked it up, he realized he had just accepted a life-or-death duel set to take place at dawn. When Dariel returned home that day, a panicked Bill immediately lectured him. According to him, it was impossible for Dariel to defeat a B-rank adventurer. To protect his life, Bill even suggested canceling the duel. Although it meant Pippetin would quietly take control of the mine, Dariel refused. He knew that someone like Pippetin would continue to oppress them if no one ever stood up against him. Seeing his determination, Smith finally offered to train Dariel in using mithril weapons within a short time. That night, while Dariel practiced throwing knives at a tree, Marika came with warm cream milk she had made. With enthusiasm, Dariel drank the special milk in one go. In that moment, she hesitantly asked if he was truly sure about fighting the next day. In response to her concern, Dariel firmly stated that he would still go through with it, because there were people he needed to protect. Hearing that brave answer, she tried to stay strong and promised to cook Dariel's favorite meal if he won. Yet deep down, she was the one most worried about his safety. The next day, the long-awaited duel finally began. Pippetin looked pleased to see that Dariel hadn't run away and arrogantly showed off his massive mithril weapon. In contrast, Dariel calmly drew only a small dagger. Seeing this, Pippetin laughed mockingly at how pathetic and tiny his opponent's weapon was. However, once the match started, Dariel became serious. Realizing the fate of the Nokers rested in his hands. Underestimating him, Pippetin even suggested that Dariel change his weapon. But in the blink of an eye, Dariel shattered Pippetin's arm guard. When Dariel warned him to surrender before his face was destroyed, Pippetin instead went berserk and charged forward. Dariel quickly retreated and stabbed his weapon into the ground. Suddenly, the blade extended and nearly pierced Pippetin. Only then, when Pippetin got close and almost struck Dariel's face, did he realize that Dariel's weapon was both solid and flexible. Remarkably, it could change shape easily when infused with aura. Because Dariel possessed an enormous reserve of aura, his weapon effectively became limitless. Without mercy, Dariel split Pippetin's shield in two and shattered his weapon into pieces. True to his cunning nature, when cornered, Pippetin grabbed a long sword from one of his subordinates and swore to send Dariel to the other world for humiliating him. In response to that dirty move, Dariel transformed his weapon into a long whip and leapt high into the air. He declared that he would punish Pippetin for hurting his friends. With a single massive strike, the whip shattered Pippetin's sword, unleashed a powerful shockwave, and sent his body flying until it got stuck on a rooftop. The villagers immediately erupted in cheers, celebrating Dariel's overwhelming victory. As Dariel nearly collapsed from exhaustion, Marika quickly caught him just in time. To Dariel, her touch felt softer than any pillow. That night, the guild representative begged for forgiveness and promised to report Pippetin's crimes to the city guild. At first, Dariel thought the situation would become complicated, but instead, he simply asked them to repair the damaged roof as compensation. Impressed by his kindness, the guild representative offered Dariel a chance to join the prestigious Central Guild. However, upon hearing that offer, Marika's expression immediately turned sad. Later that night, the scene shifted to a sauna. While soaking, Dariel reflected on the offer and wondered if he might find his parents there. Suddenly, Marika entered the sauna with a striking appearance and sat right beside him. Dariel panicked and tried to come up with a classic excuse, like going to get shampoo, but his body froze as if he sensed danger approaching. Amid the awkwardness, Marika began to open up. She confessed that she wanted to spend the rest of her time by Dariel's side. To her, Dariel was the one who had saved the village and brought her father's smile back. She assumed Dariel would leave to accept the offer, so she tried to encourage him despite her breaking heart. Seeing her sincerity, Dariel realized that her smile all this time had only been a mask to hide her sadness. Without hesitation, he told her that he wasn't going anywhere and would reject the offer. The next morning, when she asked why, Dariel answered honestly that Marika was the one who gave him a home when he had nowhere to go, and because she had accepted him, he would never leave her. Hearing that confession, Marika broke down in tears because she finally knew that her hero would stay by her side. Meanwhile, in the Demon Empire, Basfaza decided to visit his father. Upon arriving, he saw a massive ball of fire, and Grand Baza explained that he was still recovering from the aftermath of the war. He then invited his son to have dinner together. Grand Baza began asking whether Basfaza had successfully led the army to victory and whether he had listened to Dariel's advice. Without hesitation, he emphasized that Dariel was the only reason Basfaza had been able to replace him. Back then, the nobles would never have accepted his retirement if it weren't for Dariel's performance. He also reminded him that Dariel was the greatest fortune their family had ever had. When Grand Baza asked about Dariel, Basfaza lied and claimed that he hadn't driven him away. However, despite his weakened condition, Grand Baza revealed a shocking truth. All the nobles had begged him to intervene after Dariel was dismissed, urging Basfaza to bring him back immediately. Hearing that, Basfaza was furious. Flames burst from his body as his anger exploded, and he shouted that he would rather resign from his position before storming out of the castle in rage. The next morning in the village, Erica noticed that her daughter Marika was not in her room and immediately realized that Marika had finally taken a big step. And indeed, when Marika and Dariel came down the stairs together, Dariel almost slipped from sheer exhaustion as if every ounce of his energy had been drained the night before, during breakfast. And Bill grew suspicious seeing how exhausted Dariel looked and advised him not to stay too long in the sauna, which nearly made the young couple panic. Meanwhile, Erica quietly whispered to her daughter that she was happy for her. Throughout the day, Dariel was unsure how to face Bill. Suddenly, Bill called him into his office, making Dariel panic and think his secret had been exposed. In reality, Bill only wanted to discuss work. However, during their conversation, as Bill mentioned that he and Erica were getting older, Dariel realized he needed to act before any secrets came out. Without wasting time, Dariel interrupted him. Even though he felt unworthy, he bowed and asked for permission to marry Marika. He promised to devote his life to protecting her. Happily, Bill accepted the proposal. At that very moment, Marika, who had been eavesdropping, burst in, hugged Dariel with overwhelming force, and dragged him across the field. Fortunately, this time Dariel quickly used his thrust technique to launch himself into the air and escape. A year later, the village continued to grow rapidly. Dariel was deeply grateful to Smith, who had taught him how to live and interact with others. His happiness became complete when he now had a son named Gran, named after his respected adoptive father. However, that peace was disturbed when Gesida suddenly burst into the house with news that a hero was heading to the village. Dariel panicked, remembering that he had once seen the hero's face while serving as an aide to the demon generals. He imagined a terrifying old demon-slaying man, but to his surprise, when the group arrived, the hero turned out to be a young girl named Raid, accompanied by her companions Zeta and Satina. During introductions, Raid was confused about how someone like Dariel could be a village chief, as she had expected a retired male hero. Relieved that his identity remained safe, Dariel tried to play it down, but unfortunately, Raid even asked him to put his helmet back on because she found his face unpleasant. Long story short, Raid revealed that her purpose was to order mithril weapons to defeat the Demon King. When she praised the warmth of the village, Dariel realized that she was quite innocent and socially awkward, even slower than a senile old man trying to recite a spell. At Dariel's home, Marika warmly welcomed them. Seeing baby Gran, Raid became excited and offered to hold him, happily believing she was holding a hero's child when in fact, he was Dariel's son. Amusingly, baby Gran soon became fussy and cried for milk, making Dariel realize that trade clearly came from him. The next morning, Dariel found Raid still sleeping in an unconscious-looking position. As soon as she woke up, she instantly changed clothes, reminding everyone that she was indeed a hero. They then went to Smith's workshop. Dariel explained the process of forging mithril weapons, which could melt when hammered and absorb aura. As a demonstration, Satina infused her aura into it, causing the weapon to glow warmly. Interested, Raid placed an order. The problem was, Smith had forgotten that modern heroes were women. He awkwardly examined Raid's hand to determine her aura type, which turned out to be slash, and luckily guessed correctly before getting accused of harassment. At that moment, Raid revealed her second objective, recruiting a fourth member. Hearing this, Gesida thought it was her time to shine. However, the selection process turned into chaos. 26 confident villagers were easily defeated by the heroes group, who fought using only wooden sticks and pot lids. In an instant, everyone was knocked out, leaving Raid and Zeta disappointed at the lack of worthy opponents. Suddenly, Gesida, who had been hiding in the trees, fired a mithril arrow. Raid was impressed but destroyed it instantly. Not giving up, Gesida prepared another shot, but Raid countered with a blinding light. The situation escalated when Raid prepared to unleash her ultimate move, Skyke leaving Slash, to eliminate Gesida. At that moment, an apple flew in and cancelled the spell. It was thrown by Dariel. Raid immediately realized that Dariel possessed the strongest aura there. After comforting the crying Gesida, Dariel was forced to accept a one-on-one duel challenge from Raid. At first, Dariel refused, claiming he was retired. But sensing a mysterious aura similar to past heroes, Raid attacked anyway. The battle erupted. Dariel kept dodging and blocking her attacks using a simple stick, even managing to trap her leg with a whip-like technique. Frustrated, Raid unleashed a full-power strike that split the mountain peak, making everyone realize she was serious. Yet Dariel remained completely unharmed. Overwhelmed, Raid began to cry, realizing she had finally found the man she had been searching for. She then unleashed her ultimate attack again, but Dariel, having seen it before, copied the move and neutralized it with the same technique, causing a massive explosion of smoke. After the dust settled, the entire hero party begged Dariel to join them, something he immediately rejected in his heart. That night, Raid approached Dariel while he was feeding Gran and asked why he refused. In response, Dariel showed her a family portrait drawn by Gesida, saying he wanted to watch his son grow up. Still stubborn, Raid felt he was hiding something. For a moment, Dariel recalled his past and his personal reasons for not wanting to fight demons. But Raid honestly shared her motivation. She wanted to protect the smiles of all children, whether human or demon. In the following days, Raid and Satina began secretly observing Dariel in a ridiculous way, hiding under wooden boxes. They watched him work as a counselor, clean the village, and even feed wild animals, although Satina admired Dariel's peaceful life. Raid felt that such immense talent was being wasted in a small village, so she challenged Dariel to a private talk in the mountains. There, Raid demanded an explanation of how he could copy a hero's technique. When Dariel admitted he had simply learned it by watching, Raid became even more frustrated and jealous. Amid the tension, Dariel explained his perspective that the Demon King's army only attacked to keep heroes away, and that the war could end if humans stopped attacking first. He believed the demons were also tired of war and admitted that he had people on both sides he wanted to protect. Hearing his sincerity, Raid realized that Dariel possessed an incredibly strong heart. As a compromise, she decided not to force him to join, but instead asked him to become her teacher. Dariel agreed, realizing that by keeping the hero close, he could delay the war and protect the most important things in his life. A few days later, the peaceful atmosphere in Dariel's house was disrupted by the arrival of Javiontes, the wine general. While playing with baby Gran, Javiontes casually remarked that the baby really looked like Dariel, especially because his face was just as ugly as his useless father's. Without any guilt, she even used Joy's body as a chair. Or perhaps the other way around, given their strange dynamic, saying it was punishment for Joyce for hiding Dariel's whereabouts from him. At that very moment, they entered the room. Upon seeing the guests, Marika initially thought they were just Dariel's old friends and politely excused herself to get some grape juice. Unfortunately, things quickly went downhill when Javiontes started chatting and Sage was happy to see Dariel again. Then, in a mocking tone, she asked whether Dariel's sword was still as small as before. Hearing that ambiguous remark, Marika's anger instantly flared up. She thought she was insulting her husband, and in a flash, a pot lid flew at high speed, nearly smashing Javiontes' face. At that moment, her life flashed before his eyes in pure terror. After things calmed down a bit, Dariel asked Javiontes the real reason for her visit. Javiontes finally revealed that was searching for a supply of mithril and had followed Joyce to this village after discovering that had secretly been sending mithril to the Empire. Without hesitation, she ordered Dariel to hand over all the village's mithril stock. Of course, Dariel flatly refused, feeling insulted. Javiontes threatened to teach him a physical lesson, worried that their fight would destroy the house and provoke more anger. Dariel suggested they settle the matter outside the village. Once outside, Javiontes immediately showed off her power by blowing up an innocent tree, threatening to do the same to Dariel if he kept refusing unfazed. Dariel soared into the sky and drew his weapon, warning Joyce to stay back to avoid being caught in the crossfire. The battle began. When Javiontes summoned a destructive wind sphere, Dariel charged straight at her. Cleverly, when Javiontes tried to alter his spell, Dariel abruptly switched his fighting technique, nearly ending Javiontes' life on the spot. However, the stubborn general claimed the attack was too fast and invalid, demanding a rematch. For the next several hours, Javiontes was relentlessly beaten by Dariel. Despite being battered and bruised, her pride wouldn't let him stop. At the climax, he prepared to destroy the entire village with his ultimate move, Geostrum. Seeing the danger, Dariel responded immediately, unleashing a sky-cleaving slash that effortlessly cut through Javiontes' attack in an instant. The clash of energies drained Javiontes completely, sending him falling helplessly toward the forest. With good intentions, Dariel flew after her to help. Unfortunately, instead of grabbing her hand, Dariel only managed to catch a piece of cloth, which turned out to be Javiontes' underwear. As a result, the added weight caused them to fall even faster. Luckily, Joyce cast a spell to slow their descent and soften the landing. At the last moment, Javiontes noticed Dariel holding his underwear. Crying dramatically, he swore he would report this perverted act to the monster girl, Marika. In her desperation to atone for her mistakes and avoid the impending wrath, she swore that she would sell as much mithril as Javiontes wanted, as long as she was given a replica of his sword. A few minutes later, they arrived at the smithy. However, just as Dariel asked the cowardly blacksmith, or his apprentice, to forge the replica's sword, Joyce suddenly signaled that it was getting late. Dariel immediately understood the hero, Raid, would soon return to avoid a disastrous encounter between the hero and the demon general. Dariel begged the smith to delay the weapon's completion for as long as possible. He then hurriedly left the workshop. Not long after, he ran into the hero's party. Strangely, when Dariel casually asked about Piyama, Raid responded ambiguously, asking whether Dariel preferred seeing her without clothes. Before Dariel could even respond in shock, Raid ordered him to practice 100,000 sword swings, feeling safe because he thought the smith was keeping Javiantes occupied. Dariel allowed Raid to enter the village. That night, he found the blacksmith hiding inside a trash barrel, admitting he could no longer hold Javiantes back. Unfortunately, at that exact moment, the door burst open, revealing Javiantes. Chaos erupted when Raid also appeared and sat beside Dariel just as Javiantes' towel slipped off his head. Misunderstanding the situation as something indecent, both powerful women slapped Dariel at the same time during dinner. The atmosphere became extremely awkward. Susanna warned that there would be a long trial later, while Raid threatened to cut off Dariel's hands. Meanwhile, Javiantes was busy mocking Raid for being flat-chested. Eventually, when Raid questioned why Dariel was so close to a demon general, he honestly revealed that he was a human raised in the demon empire. Hearing this, they replied that they had already known that when he proposed. However, Dariel firmly stated that whether he was once tied to demons or humans would never change his love. Even so, Raid stubbornly insisted that Javiantes had no place in the village and tried to drive her away. Fed up with the argument, one of them slammed a large pot onto the table and declared that the only way to settle things was through an all-out fight. Both immediately agreed. Javiantes planned to sleep in preparation, but Raid mocked her as an amateur and ran off to the sauna. Not wanting to lose, Javiantes chased after her. Watching their behavior, Dariel could only lament his fate, wondering why he always attracted such psychotic women. The next day, they found the exhausted blacksmith, who had been forced to stay up all night finishing both of their weapons. Ignoring his fatigue, the two women were already ready to fight. The battle began. Javiantes unleashed her wings of light and fired an energy blast, which was immediately countered by Raid's attack. The two clashed with incredible speed and agility. Javiantes used her wings as a shield before counterattacking, pushing Raid back. At the same time, the others arrived carrying Baby Gran to watch. The duel intensified. Javiantes managed to knock Raid down and kick away her sword, preparing to finish the fight with a powerful spell, either a psychic laser or a light tornado. Not backing down, Raid responded with her signature move, a sky-splitting slash. The collision of their immense powers nearly destroyed the ground. Satina quickly created a barrier to protect the spectators, and impressively, Dariel managed to create his own barrier by copying her technique, leaving her astonished in the middle of the chaos. Baby Gran's eyes sparkled as he spotted what he thought was the greatest source of milk in the world, and he suddenly leaped into the battlefield. At the same time, the massive energy clash caused the mountain above them to begin collapsing. Reacting quickly, Dariel jumped in to save his son, while Raid also rushed to protect the baby. Surprisingly, Javiantes used her storm barrier to destroy the falling rocks and prevent them from crushing everyone when the dust settled. Gran appeared completely unharmed and was even laughing joyfully. Seeing this, both Raid and Javiantes felt immense relief. Realizing that the baby only wanted to play, they looked at each other and finally laughed together, understanding that they were not enemies after all. Witnessing this scene, Dariel smiled happily. He knew that his dream had finally come true, a world where demons and humans could laugh together in peace. A few days later, the peaceful atmosphere in Dariel's home suddenly turned tense when Zayt arrived, introducing a special guest, Reconciling, the legendary former hero. Unfortunately, at that exact moment, Javiantes casually showed up asking Dariel for snacks, completely unaware of the danger right in front of her. Dariel's heart nearly stopped. He thought his life would end instantly if Reconciling discovered that a demon general was there, trying to save the situation. Dariel hurriedly signaled Javiantes with his eyes, even scaring her by saying that Reconciling was a terrifying hero who once survived the eternal fire prison of Gran Baza. However, things didn't go as planned. A group of children suddenly gathered around Reconciling. Instead of destroying them like monsters, Reconciling kindly played with them. Soon enough, a long line of villagers formed outside Dariel's house, all eager to greet the legendary hero. A few hours later, the situation became even more ridiculous when Reconciling shook Javiantes' hand and praised how warm it felt, thinking she was just a kind, ordinary girl. Meanwhile, Dariel secretly warned her not to use magic under any circumstances if she didn't want to be eliminated. Curious, Dariel asked why Reconciling had come to such a remote village. It turned out Reconciling was there to bring Raid back to the city, believing his student had been slacking off. Blaming himself for promoting Raid to hero too quickly, he wanted to train her again. Seeing an opportunity, Dariel offered to guide them to the training grounds, thinking this would give Javiantes the perfect chance to escape while they were distracted. Comically, Reconciling briefly stopped, sensing a suspicious presence, but it turned out to be Gasida's odd-looking face peeking through the window. The training test began. Raid attacked Reconciling with full spirit, but the difference in their levels was overwhelming. Reconciling effortlessly dodged every attack, even casually signing autographs for villagers at the same time. At the peak of the demonstration, Reconciling caught Raid's wooden sword with just 2 fingers and flipped it back, exhausting her completely. Even so, Reconciling acknowledged that Raid had grown stronger and asked who trained her. Proudly, Raid answered that Dariel was the one who taught her. Intrigued, Reconciling challenged Dariel to a sparring match. Of course, Dariel wanted to refuse, knowing he would likely be crushed by the hero. Unfortunately, Casita loudly supported the idea, exposing that Dariel was actually very strong, leaving him with no excuse to decline. Reluctantly, Dariel accepted, but suggested they eat lunch first to regain their strength, a classic tactic to stall for time. During lunch, Reconciling greatly enjoyed the rice balls made by Dariel. Meanwhile, the stubborn Javiantes secretly watched from a distance. Disaster struck when a strong gust of wind nearly blew away her disguise. Instinctively, Javiantes used levitation magic to catch it, but this caused a shift in the flow of mana. Reconciling immediately sensed it. Without warning, he threw his nunchaku into the sky, which shot forward and pinned Javiantes to the wall. In an instant, Reconciling stood before her and declared that he knew she was a demon. As he prepared to deliver a fatal strike, Dariel jumped in and blocked the attack. Reconciling warned him to step aside, but Dariel firmly refused. He could not allow Javiantes to be killed. At that moment, Dariel was reminded of the past, when his father, Grand Baza, protected him from this very hero. Now he wondered if he could stop this monster on his own. The battle became unavoidable. Dariel swung his sword, but Reconciling nimbly leaped over it. Dariel tried using a whip, but Reconciling blocked it and unleashed an energy blast that pushed him back. Despite being cornered, Dariel managed to use his whip to pull Javiantes away from danger. Suddenly, Rancile's staff came flying toward them. Dariel quickly raised a stone wall, but it was shattered as easily as paper. Raid and Casita tried to help, but Dariel shouted at them to stay back. The level of this fight was far too dangerous. In the midst of battle, Reconciling became impressed. He realized Dariel was only the second adventurer he had ever met who could master all four aura elements. He even offered Dariel the chance to become a replacement hero, convinced that together they could easily bring down the demon empire. But Dariel flatly refused. Disappointed, Reconciling drew his weapon again, preparing to eliminate both Dariel and the demon. He unleashed a blazing technique, the Red Dragon. In response, Dariel pushed Javiantes aside and countered with his Sky-cleaving slash. A massive explosion erupted as the two techniques collided. Seeing Dariel fight so desperately just to protect a demon, Raid, her body trembling, asked why. Breathing heavily, Reconciling accused Dariel of lying about wanting peace while protecting the enemy. Finally, Dariel revealed his true feelings. He apologized for the tragedy that had befallen Rancil's family in the past when they were killed by demons. However, he firmly declared that he did not want that cycle of hatred to continue. He explained that he didn't want to lose his own family because of war. To him, Javiantes was not an evil demon, but someone precious, innocent, and worthy of being protected. Still unsatisfied with the previous answer, Reconciling felt that Dariel was hiding something and pressed him for the real reason why he cared so much about demons. Realizing he could no longer conceal the truth in front of the legendary hero, Dariel finally admitted that he had actually been raised by demons. The scene then shifted to the Demon Empire, where Grand Baza was meeting the Demon King. Strangely, Grand Baza saw the Demon King in the form of a dragon and wondered about it. The Demon King explained that his appearance was merely a mirror reflecting the strength of whoever looked at him. In other words, the dragon Grand Baza saw was the physical manifestation of his own power and personality. A subtle yet incredibly cool compliment. At that moment, Grand Baza made a request to dismiss his own son, Baswa Baza, for disappearing and neglecting his duties for an entire year, leaving droids to struggle alone. However, the Demon King suspected that Grand Baza was simply angry because Dariel had been dismissed, and questioned why he seemed to care more about his adopted son than his biological one. This led to the revelation of a secret from 30 years ago. The previous Water General, Bessiria, had entrusted baby Dariel to Grand Baza, calling him a secret weapon to defeat the hero. Grand Baza had found the baby hidden within a tree hollow using the Water General's magic and raised him his own child. When the Demon King revealed that Dariel was now living in a human village and had awakened all four types of aura, Grand Baza finally realized that the secret weapon referred to Dariel's limitless aura potential. Back in the village, Dariel explained to Reconciling how the Water General had handed him over to Grand Baza. Rancil's eyes widened in shock. He recalled a tragic moment when the Water General had killed his wife and abducted his infant son, whose body was never found. With a trembling voice, Reconciling asked, "How old are you now?" When Dariel answered that he was 33 years old, Reconciling immediately embraced him and declared that Dariel was his long-lost biological son. Stunned by this twist, Dariel struggled to comprehend how it could be true. Reconciling explained his reasoning. His wife was killed 30 years ago, and his baby vanished without a trace. The fact that both of them possessed maximum aura capacity was undeniable proof, as aura attributes could only be inherited from one's biological parents. The emotional moment was suddenly interrupted when Aranciel sensed a powerful orb and reflexively fired an energy blast forth. Forest. However, a wall of flames appeared and blocked the attack. From within the smoke emerged Grand Baza, landing majestically in front of Dariel, expressing how happy he was to see his adopted son again. Without hesitation, Aranciel readied his staff and demanded to know why Grand Baza had come. Seeing both of his fathers ready to fight, Dariel boldly stepped between them and firmly told Aranciel that Grand Baza was the one who had been his father all this time. Looking at Dariel, Grand Baza finally spoke honestly. He admitted that he had known Dariel was human since he was 5 years old because he couldn't use magic, but he had never allowed that fact to come between them. Hearing the truth that had long weighed on him, Dariel sincerely said that Grand Baza would always be his father and thanked him for raising him into a good man. Deeply moved, Grand Baza embraced Dariel, calling him the pride of his life and the inspiration that made him become the strongest demon. Unfortunately, this touching father-son moment only fueled Rancel's anger and jealousy. Overcome with emotion, he accused Grand Baza of stealing those precious moments from him. Aranciel felt his life had been wasted, rather than becoming strong to raise his son. He had grown strong out of hatred to kill demons, feeling guilty. Grand Baza acknowledged that Aranciel had every right to be angry and allowed him to vent his resentment. At that moment, a terrifying killing aura began radiating from both of the powerful elders. Panicked, Dariel desperately searched for a way to stop this impending disaster. Fortunately, someone arrived like a saving angel, splashing water on them to cool things down. She firmly scolded them, calling their behavior shameful for those bearing the title of hero, and begged them not to display hatred in front of their grandchild. The word grandchild worked like magic. Instantly, both Aranciel and Grand Baza fell silent, realizing their new roles. The two greatest warriors in history were no longer just legendary fighters, but simply to grandfathers, softened by the presence of their grandchild. Thanks to Marika's help, Dariel finally realized what he had to do. Without hesitation, he came up with a brilliant plan. He asked Grand Baza to keep living for the sake of his son, and he asked Aranciel to train baby Gran as his grandchild. Aranciel was overjoyed to meet his grandchild for the first time. In the midst of that happiness, Dariel thanked Marika for her incredible support and said how grateful he was to have married her. Hearing that praise, she hugged him so tightly that his poor bones nearly shattered again. Meanwhile, in the Demon Empire, Baswa Baza arrived at a grand reception that was supposed to celebrate his appointment as the greatest general. Strangely, the hall was completely empty. He asked the manager whether everyone had forgotten or been brainwashed. Brutally, the manager replied that no one wanted to see Baswa Baza's disgusting face. Everyone had rejected the invitation, and worse, Grand Baza had even asked the Demon King to dismiss him. This was all because the Demon King's army was starving due to Baswa Baza's inability to generate income, and the loss of the mithril mine was the final nail in the coffin of his career. Baswa Baza insisted that he had a secret strategy to defeat the hero, but the manager sharply replied that the only strategy he needed was to fix his face. He even blamed him for firing Dariel, whose absence had destroyed the empire's economy. Frustrated, Baswa Baza tried to order grape juice, but the chef refused to serve him due to unpaid bills. The chef revealed a painful truth. It had always been Dariel who paid for everything, and ever since he left, the place had gone bankrupt. Enraged by constantly hearing Dariel's name praised, Baswa Baza exploded in anger. He destroyed the place with a burst of magic and stormed out, activating his evil eye and swearing to eliminate Dariel. Back in the village, the most terrifying hero in history, Aranciel, was happily playing with baby Gran. Meanwhile, Grand Baza commented that the name Gran was very nice, but the baby suddenly cried loudly. Aranciel took the chance to mock Grand Baza, saying anyone would cry if they were held by such a scary old man. Suddenly, a call came in. Droiz was on the line. Grand Baza tried to speak with him to ask for help, but instead ended up being humiliated during dinner. And Bill quietly reflected among these incredibly strong and slightly insane people, wondering how he could ever fit in as Dariel's father-in-law. Interestingly, this was the first time Dariel learned that his father-in-law's real name wasn't Bill, since he had always just called him father. A few hours later, Grand Baza reminisced about Dariel's childhood, recalling how sad Dariel was when he realized he had no magic, yet never gave up. Hearing this, Aranciel wished he had memories like that too. But he was still proud to see his son grow into a great leader thanks to Grand Baza's guidance. A touching moment followed when Aranciel extended a hand of friendship to Grand Baza. Dariel was overjoyed to see his two fathers reconcile. However, they noticed that Dariel's arm was still injured from the battle, so Marika treated him throughout the night while praising her husband's kindness. Unfortunately, the romantic moment was interrupted when she had to go wash the dishes. As soon as she left, Javiantes quietly slipped into Dariel's room. Misunderstanding the situation, she thought Dariel had fallen in love with her, especially since he once said her life was as important as his family or wife. Blushing, Javiantes promised to think about their romance and then ran off, leaving Dariel completely confused. The next morning, Raid asked Arenciel to train her again. Determined to continue her duty as a hero and defeat the Demon King, a serious discussion followed. Arenciel believed the Demon King was the source of all misfortune, while the Central Guild believed the Demon King held wisdom, mana, and possibly even the key to human evolution. However, Grand Baza revealed a shocking truth. The current Demon King was the very first and only immortal Demon King, the one who granted magic to all demons. This revelation left Raid shaken. Suddenly, Pippetin arrived in panic, reporting that the mithril mine was under attack by a monster. Without wasting time, Dariel asked Javiantes to fly them to the location. As they approached the mine, the intense heat from a dragon's flames forced them to land. Dariel and Arenciel rushed inside to rescue the trapped Nogres. While Raid, Javiantes, and Satina faced the dragon outside, a fierce battle erupted. Raid's physical attacks were ineffective, and her energy blasts nearly backfired on her if Javiantes hadn't saved her. Meanwhile, the dragon's flames melted Satina's barrier until Grand Buzz arrived and absorbed the fire. Inside the mine, Dariel found the Nogres buried under rubble, but the dragon blocked his path. Together with Arenciel, they unleashed a combined high-level sky-cleaving slash, forcing the dragon to retreat and fly away. Raid sensed deep hatred coming from the dragon. Suspicious, Grand Baza decided to return to the Demon King's castle and asked Javiantes to teleport him there. Although Dariel managed to save the Nogres, he felt saddened for failing to fully protect the mine, and some guild workers were still missing. Arenciel advised him that he couldn't protect everything alone and needed to rely on his allies. Meanwhile, at the Demon Castle, Grand Baza caught Baswa Baza casually drinking coffee. Seeing the evil eye in his son's gaze, Grand Baza realized that Baswa Baza had entered a forbidden chamber, the place where dangerous ancient curse techniques were sealed by their ancestors. Baswa Baza had stolen a technique to control a salamander, the very fire dragon that attacked the mine. Deeply disappointed, Grand Baza scolded him harshly, even comparing him to Dariel. That was a fatal mistake. The comparison ignited Baswa Baza's rage. Having already used a spirit synchronization technique, he summoned the salamander again and threatened to destroy Dariel and the entire village. Then, mounting the dragon, he flew away, leaving his father behind. At the same time, inside the collapsed mine cave, Dariel was busy searching for the missing people. Suddenly, a stone god, or the incarnation of the salamander, appeared before him. At first, Dariel thought he was about to be devoured and tried to escape, but the exit was already blocked. The stone god explained that the salamander was a reflection of the caster's anger, and the only way to stop it before it consumed the world was to absorb its power. Without hesitation, the stone god entered Dariel's mithril blade, granting him immense earth element power before disappearing into the cave walls. Shortly after, Dariel received a call from Grand Baza, informing him that Baswa Baza was controlling a massive fire dragon and heading toward the village. Panicked, Dariel rushed back and ordered an evacuation. In a brief farewell moment, Marika gave him her engagement ring as a good luck charm, asking him to promise he would return safely. Not long after, Baswa Baza arrived riding the dragon, launching a massive fireball as a terrifying opening attack. Dariel tried to negotiate, but seeing Dariel's happiness only fueled Baswa Baza's desire to destroy everything. Realizing diplomacy had failed, Dariel unleashed his whip, assisted by Javiantes with magic to restrain the dragon. Seizing the opportunity, Dariel struck Baswa Baza with a sky-defending slash, successfully separating him from the dragon. Even so, Dariel still tried to apologize for taking the mithril mine. Surprisingly, Baswa Baza admitted he didn't care about the mine at all. He destroyed it just to lure Dariel out. He then revealed his true motive. He wanted to kill Dariel so that history would forget him, and then wipe out humanity to become the strongest general. The battle intensified. Dariel cut through Baswa Baza's flames, but was thrown back by a follow-up explosion. Baswa Baza continued his relentless assault, even causing the ground to erupt beneath Dariel's feet. Miraculously, Dariel survived by unleashing a sky-cleaving slash at the last second. But Baswa Baza was far from defeated. He transformed into his strongest form, his body covered in dragon scales due to the effects of a curse. Meanwhile, the others were fighting the physical form of the salamander. Satina trapped the dragon with a 5-layer barrier. Gesita rained arrows down on it, and Arenciel struck it with lightning. At the climax, Grand Baza sealed the dragon within an endless burning prison, temporarily neutralizing it. Back in the brothers' duel, Baswa Baza, now covered in dragon scales, attacked Dariel brutally, throwing him into a mountain and beating him mercilessly. In a critical moment, Dariel awakened the full power of his mithril blade and fired a massive energy blast into the sky, destroying half the forest to counter Baswa-Baz's giant fireball. The collision triggered an unexpected side effect: the activation of spirit synchronization magic. This pulled Dariel into Baswa-Baz's memories. Inside that world, Baswa-Baz's tragic past was revealed. Since childhood, he had always been compared to Dariel. His mother demanded he be the best in the Magic Academy, but even after succeeding, he still felt unaccepted. His father, Grand Baza, always told him to rely on Dariel. That jealousy and loneliness grew into deep hatred. He believed the only way to be acknowledged was to kill Dariel. Realizing his brother's pain, Dariel embraced him within the memory world. He told him that Grand Baza had always cared about him, and that he himself had always wanted to be there for him. Then Dariel's own memory surfaced. Baswa-Baza saw how lonely Dariel had been as a child, unable to use magic and feeling like he didn't belong, until he found happiness after meeting Baswa-Baza and considered him a true brother. Hearing this heartfelt confession, the dragon scales on Baswa-Baz's body began to fall away. Deep down, he realized he shouldn't have run from Dariel. When Dariel extended his hand to reconcile, Baswa-Baza almost accepted it, but fate intervened. The unstable curse caused the salamander to revive at full power, absorbing all the surrounding flames. In an attempt to atone, Baswa-Baza charged forward and merged his body with the dragon, intending to self-destruct along with it. Grand Baza panicked and tried to separate them by absorbing the curse into himself. At that critical moment, Dariel appeared like a hero, delivering his ultimate sky-cleaving slash and completely destroying the dragon. Javiantes caught them as they fell using wind magic, and the family was finally saved. A few days later at the Demon King's castle, Baswa-Baza turned himself and requested execution. The wise and slightly mischievous Demon King initially threatened to throw him into the gates of hell, but ultimately chose to pardon him with exile, a punishment identical to Dariel's, meaning he could live anywhere freely. In the end, the true reunion of the family took place in the village. Baswa-Baza and Grand Baza attended a celebration party. The emotional atmosphere peaked when Baswa-Baza apologized to everyone. Suddenly, baby Grand woke up and reached out to be held by him. As he held his nephew, Baswa-Baza finally understood the true meaning of family. An emotional Gesida immediately called him Big Brother while crying uncontrollably, and everyone warmly welcomed him back. Seeing that perfect moment, Dariel asked Gesida to paint a portrait of their big family. The day ended beautifully, becoming an eternal memory of a united human and demon family, immortalized in a single painting.